Hello. Hi, Marie. Hello, everyone. My name is Isla, and welcome to SCALEup's The Marketer Snack Box. This is our bite-sized knowledge-sharing event series. Joining me today, we have Marie Demont, who is the head of brand and campaigns at Omio. Omio is a travel app and platform that allows people to find and book trains, buses, and flights in one place. During today's session, we'll find out how the travel and tourism industry, which arguably is one of the hardest hit industries of them all, has been managing during the COVID-19 crisis. Before then, we will take a deep dive into Omio's specific challenges, learnings, and predictions for a post-pandemic future. So welcome, Marie. How are you?
Hi, good afternoon, Ayla. I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no problem. I think actually this comes as good timing because I think right now, especially in Europe or at least in Germany, the restrictions are loosening a little bit. So I feel like we maybe need to take a step back almost to remind ourselves how it was in dealing with the COVID crisis, especially as a travel company. Mm-hmm. We can rewind a little bit back into March, which was of course the start of the lockdown. Yeah. I noticed during this time, many travel companies actually pulled back on their marketing spend, probably as a safe option. However, there's a lot of research that found that brands can actually speed up their recovery post-lockdown by building brand value and awareness during this critical time. And one of the campaigns that Omio decided to launch during this period was the Stay Safe, Stay Home campaign. So, Marie, can you tell me a little bit more about this campaign?
Sure. So let me just maybe pull a deck, I think, which will just illustrate what it is that I want to say and give you some more background. Let me just make sure that I can have a big present. Cool. So as you said, Ayla, Omio, as one of the many travel companies, actually got seriously hit by COVID, and the way it manifested itself for us was that basically right after COVID was declared a global pandemic, the effect that it instantly had on our business was a surge in cancellations. At the same time, we saw our revenues basically dropping down to zero. And we saw a clear need for us to focus on customer service as ways of communicating with our customers much more than we might have in the past. So in terms of our response, because you mentioned specifically the Stay Safe, Stay Home campaign, again, I'd like to give a bit more background. As you said, we are a travel company. So at that time, March, we were actually planning the next big seasonal campaign, which would have been around Easter, right? So until March the 10th, we were basically into creative design productions to actually encourage travelers to travel all around Europe and, to give them ideas of little adventures that they could go on. And we saw obviously progressively first cases of COVID spreading in countries where Omio is very active, including Italy and Spain. So per the campaign, the Easter campaign itself kind of shifted to being more focused on maybe Northern Europe. But as I said, 11th of March was kind of the end to that plan. And we had to very quickly as an organization come up with a new response. And that response was stay home, stay safe, be human as a global concept. Because we clearly understood that as Omio, we had a responsibility towards travelers to actually make them really aware of the risks around traveling, and that we needed actually to be a reliable and trustable partner when it came to providing the most accurate information. So the way it manifested itself is that we really had to answer this kind of tension and struggle between, on one end, maybe people who were about to travel around March, and we're kind of really in this limbo of not knowing how and where and if, and actually were urgently in need of support. And at the same time, people who were, again, not knowing how long the situation was last, and were still, hoping and dreaming of travel. But yeah, the first priority for us was obviously to tackle people who were in need of immediate response. And the way it manifested itself within the organization is that we very quickly switched from this, spring campaign to this stay safe, stay home campaign. That meant, for example, product takeover, where I think we made the very bold move as an organization, and really the consensus around that was extremely quick. So within a couple of days, we actually launched the stay safe, stay home campaign, which meant that, we directly on the homepage actually told customers not to travel, which is for sure an unusual thing to do for a travel company. And then there was obviously lots of communication around informations that were crucial for travelers at that time to find. So one of the first measures, and again, that was amazing what we managed to do in terms of team effort to put that up really fast, was this providers policy. So basically, because Omio is this global platform where we have 800 providers on the site, we were able to pull up really fast providers policy. So for people who are not familiar with the jargon, providers, I mean airlines, I mean travel companies, bus companies. So what the customers needed to know about which of these companies were still operating, on which route, what happened if my flight was being cancelled, were there some particular measures that I needed to take if I were to travel on that train from A to B, and so on and so forth. So really kind of proactively put out this massive amount of data to help customers navigate through the uncertainties.
It also, I mean, that feels like a very human-centric approach as well, to really put the customers first, to give them as many educated insights as you can. What was the type of response you got from your users and from your target audience?
So this page, for example, was visited by thousands of visitors on a daily basis, and found really helpful. As a matter of fact, press really picked up on this tool that we launched, and named Omio one of the 3 most, let's say, innovative or active companies in that COVID phase, by really, putting together relevant information for the customer. So again, that's really much the phase that we focused on. We also totally changed the content that we had, for example, on social media. So really making people aware that we would be kind of changing from this more inspiration-driven approach that was ours so far, destinations and so on, to really making sure that they will be fully updated in terms of what they could and could not do. We also shared travel-related news around COVID, and so on and so forth. And that actually met quite a positive response on social media. And then progressively, as we went through that phase, and people were kind of getting familiar with the situation and the regulations and everything, we felt the need to, as you said, transition to even more human approach, and kind of also provide this inspirational content that I think we stand for as a brand, and then bringing more, this human touch. So basically saying we're all in this together. How can we somehow still stay connected and be part of this global community? So again, in terms of content on social media, for example, where it manifested itself is that we pulled together this user-generated content. So asking our users to share, views from the window, from their balcony, wherever it is that they were stuck at home, and kind of a way of, sharing these experiences and saying we're all in this together. And also enabling people who were actually stuck at home at that time to still get some, travel excitement by things like virtual guided tours, museum tours, and so on and so forth, which luckily flourished at the same time online. And then we also gave ideas for books around travels, films around travel, and I think that helped bringing back this humanity and making maybe this entire phase, including for our community, a bit more lighthearted and uplifting, which I think we all very much needed.
Definitely. And I know you guys also as a company didn't go through the tough times alone, because I think from our previous conversations, you also decided to take the move to go into short-term work as well. So you managed to take care of all of this and basically speak to your users, build a very human-centric marketing strategy, all while most of the company was basically on short-term work. So how did that affect you guys as a company and as a culture to have such a shift during this time to short-term work?
Um, so we went into Kurzarbeit probably about a month after the COVID pandemic was declared in Europe. So, I mean, what I'm showing right now, this Stay Safe, Stay Human, is something that happened while we were still working full time, however, from home. So March 13th is the date when the internal communication teams basically sent everyone home. Supposedly at the time it was only meant to be for 2 weeks. And that was actually incredible how fast people adjusted to this work from home approach. And especially when it comes to that campaign, we came up with a concept, we came up with the first visuals very, very quick, and you could see this, like this company, you know, really coming together and wanting to make the best, let's say, for our users, and really pushing that through extremely fast. So there was this almost increase of energy that people felt from this really unprecedented situation and being at home. So somehow I think that brought us together. And yes, unfortunately, like 1 month into this crisis, as I said before, like in April, we really saw our revenues going basically down to zero. So that's when the company had to take more drastic measures in terms of managing cash, among others. And that meant having to send part of the workforce on Kurzarbeit. So some people stayed in to, let's say, work on most critical projects, but also obviously to keep supporting customers, for example, through our customer service. So basically people on the customer center side of things, partnerships, relationship, and so on. So it was really a phase that was called Keep the Lights On, where most people stayed home and then part of the organization stayed on board. I wasn't part of these people who stayed on board, to be really honest. That's a time where I was off, but what I've heard is that, again, people managing less resources and less time available were nevertheless able to pull really amazing projects together, really managed to, as I said, manage cash in a very positive way, and to work on, let's say, the foundation. So if you think like SEO, there's a lot that you can do, right? Like cleaning up your pages, but also making sure that you work on the authority of your website and so on and so forth. And that's the time, let's say, that was put to use to really make sure that, you know, we prepared for the after COVID times.
Yeah, you clearly showed that you had some major learnings over this time as well. So it kind of begs the question, if this was to happen, if there was this big second wave, which everyone seems to keep using the term, what is one of the key learnings that you think you'll take as a company if this was to happen again?
So what we clearly saw is that we were not prepared to face the huge amount of customer contacts that came as a result of COVID coming in. So very quickly, our customer center was overflowed with requests. One of the measures that we put in place back then was to actually pull resources from other departments. So you had all of a sudden like a commercial manager or a brand director, you know, stepping in and actually helping sort out the tickets, so the customer requests that were coming in. And that was a huge effort, which was not so quick, let's say, to implement. So I think if that were to happen again, first of all, we would have the trainings in place and we would kind of know how to organize these teams to answer that even more effectively, because this had a huge impact on, you know, like customer satisfaction and actually customer dissatisfaction, right? Not being in a position to answer these requests as fast as we would have liked. And I brought another example here of campaign that we also launched in that COVID time. So again, after the stay home, stay safe was kind of more implemented. Something that was launched by my colleagues during the Kurzarbeit was a Vacay replay challenge. I'm sure you guys have seen some of these initiatives online, right? Where users are encouraged to recreate, you know, pieces of art or things like that. So we from Omio, we said, hey, why not, you know, bring some fun and encourage our users to recreate their favorite holiday picture. And I must say that although we had really fun contributions and we were able to pick a winner and everything, that's, I think, the campaign, the small social media campaign, where we as an organization draw the learning that if you're not able to, first of all, answer the most pressing pain points of your customers, which in that case was to know what's happening with my cancellation. I've reached out to you a couple of weeks ago and I still don't have my refund, then your campaigns just can't be successful, right? So even though the idea was cool, we had good contributions, this campaign was kind of suffocated, I would say, under negative noise. Yeah, so negative, fully right, you know, customers want responses to their requests, but we're just not able to kind of keep up with that pace. And that just basically meant that from a marketing efforts perspective, it was worthless.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I think at this point, you need to ease their concerns first before trying to segue them into the bigger picture as well.
Right.
Actually, this comes as a nice timing because I would like to talk a little bit more about the future of travel, because now that the restrictions have loosened up a little bit, at least here in Europe, where it is more accessible for us to travel, I'm wondering how that's reflecting now on Omio. So first of all, yeah, how are you seeing it develop? Are you seeing obviously an increase now in users and traffic? And also, what would you imagine the prediction of this to continue? Are we going to see a movement back into free travel again?
Yes. So yes, we do see organic demand coming back. So we do see that, you know, after all these weeks of being stuck at home, customers actually crave travel again. I mean, travel is a human, you know, dream. Is something that we need. So it's not because it's been held back for the last weeks or months that that's a situation that would stay. For sure not. So we're seeing, as I said, growing demand. So people still only in the planning phase, but also more and more booking coming in. And what we clearly understand is that customers right now are looking for brands that they can trust, you know, when going into booking travel. So one of the things that was actually created during the Kurzarbeit time to provide this support and this transparency is the Open Travel Index. So that's basically a tool that we put together that enables you, wherever you're based from or wherever you want to travel from, to basically understand which countries are open, what places can I travel to, how can I travel there, and so on and so forth. So that's really something that we want to, you know, continue pushing, really being this trustable place where people can go to have the most up-to-date information, because we understand that moving forward, like, it's really about companies being able to have these multiple touch points for customers to go to. So yes, we're seeing that coming back. In terms of trend in general, so what we see from just changing so it's not bothering us with this animation, what we see clearly from a demand standpoint is that this increasing in demand is more local and regional than it is international, right? We are also seeing that people probably book a bit more last minute, again, because it's very difficult to have, you know, long-term view in terms of what's going to happen and everything, and so forth. There's more demand for flexible booking option. I think this is super important. And so the way that all translates onto the supply side, so the way that, you know, airlines and other companies are affected or responding to that is, first of all, that we see, because people travel less long distances, that there's a shift towards more ground transportation. So the companies that have been fastest to recover and will probably still benefit short to mid-term from that post-COVID era are the train companies, the bus companies, and also to an extent the car rental companies, for sure. We also see that this, let's say, shorter distance travel also probably means that even when it comes to airline, for example, the demand or the offer will switch, so more long-term flights, for example, which also probably means for them losses in revenues, so less checked-in luggage, less onboard consumption, which they would probably have to, compensate with actually higher ticket prices. And I think last but not least, it's just that we have to get used to this more new normal of, traveling with masks and all safety measures. So kind of actually having to balance on one hand, people having to keep up with these measures, so this social distancing, but at the same time, people wanting to be reunited with friends and families after times of being kept apart. So yeah, quite some challenges ahead for travel companies.
Yeah, definitely. I think before we swiftly move on to Q&A, maybe a nice finisher question is there anywhere that you hope to travel to soon in the future?
Yes, I have a long bucket list, but I think the place that I would start is probably Guadeloupe, because I have a big family, and one of my cousins has recently moved there, and he's been posting just awesome pictures of Guadeloupe and the beautiful nature and everything. So that definitely is next on my list.
Nice. Fingers crossed you make it there then. Thank you, Marie. So we have just a few more minutes left. I think we're going to switch now to some of the audience questions. One moment, I'm just going to open as we speak. Okay, so some of the questions here. One we have is, do you see any differences in how leisure and business travel are developing?
Clearly, yes. So I think one of the big changes to the way we work from COVID is this, remote work setup that companies got used to. So what it means is that it probably makes business meetings and business travel less of a necessity than it was used to, or at least people understand that there's other ways around it to collaborate in a remote setting. Plus, due to the fact of the uncertainties in terms of how the economy will bounce back and everything, companies are also cutting on travel expenses and so on. So clearly this is going to have an immediate effect and probably a lasting effect also on business travel. So we definitely expect that to come down. Leisure travel, as I said, is just something which we see has been postponed. So basically Easter holidays was cancelled, but we think that people who have saved their days of holiday will just move them to a later time of the year. And as I said before, probably more for short distance trips, right? So we see people exploring their countries and surroundings a bit more, also going to more let's say unbeaten path, right? Or less busy destinations. So as opposed to going to Barcelona, you would go to Mecklenburg-Vorpommern or something like that,
Yeah, the appreciation, I think, a bit more for like the simple travel or the slow travel again. Okay, final question we have here is, what has been your biggest learning during these challenging times?
Oh, it's a very good one. On an individual basis, it's probably the fact that there are other ways, right? There are other ways of working together. There are other ways of connecting than by being in an office together. And surprisingly, although we were like in remote distance setups, and we still are, partly because some of us are back into the office and some are not, I found that this time really brought us closer together, because all of a sudden you could see, people making conference calls from their living room with their kids or dogs jumping in the background, whatever. So that just gave you more, let's say, occasions to find out about each other, which I think is nice. We also got closer, for example, to our people from Shanghai, because obviously China was one of the first impacted markets, and also one of the first, to come out of lockdown, one of the first to have like travel places open again. So there was actually a lot of knowledge transfer that happened, and again, that brought us together with them, because so far I didn't have so much contact, and all of a sudden there was like exchange and need of insights happening. So yeah, there's just other ways of doing, and I think that's for the positive.
Yeah, I think we had a very similar experience where from all of our international offices, suddenly I felt much closer to them over this short period of 3 or 4 months than maybe I had over a span of some years. So yeah, it definitely came with, I mean, of course it's cons, but there's some pros to the situation as well.
Right.
Thank you very much, Marie. I think that's us out of time now, but I want to give you, a big thank you for joining us and obviously sharing so candidly and so openly about your experiences over this time. And I'm very fortunate and hopeful that the travel sector will definitely pick up. I think everyone is very eager to travel again. So I'm hopeful for the future of Omio as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much for welcoming me and for the great conversation. Thank you, Ayla.
Thank you, Marie. Take
Bye,
care.
everyone. Ciao, and you.